Welcome. I'm so thrilled that you took advantage of the reception part. We don't take it down. You can continue to take advantage of it. You're at the Center to Support Excellence in Teaching. My name is Janet Carlson, and I direct this center. And 3 years ago now, we started this series called Pondering Excellence in Teaching. It's obviously a play off our name. And we did it because excellence is one of those words people use a lot in education in particular, but in other places too. And we want excellence for our students, and we want excellence for our teachers. What the heck is this thing called excellence? So rather than give a traditional speaker series, we set up monthly talks during the school year at a time when practitioners could come, as well as people in the school event or anywhere on campus, to bring people who are doing interesting work in to literally ponder excellence. So Adit, who is our esteemed speaker today, whose work I just love and can't wait to hear this take on it, is not going to give you her traditional research talk. She's got it set up so you're going to get engaged in her work so you can participate in pondering. And it's going to focus on the way, a study of how feedback was given to teachers and the impact on teaching. Not 100% accurate on that, but that's the short version. So I think it should be of interest to everyone. And before we launch, since we're on the size, a smaller size, I wondered if you would be willing to just do a quick name and sort of affiliation / why you bothered to show up, like this long. So we'll start here, and I'll kind of leave us around.
Hi, I'm Scott McLeod, creating an online MIT open courseware-centric university. Degrees, including high school degrees, all countries' main languages. Wiki schools, all languages, nearly 7,000 languages.
And so why this talk?
So how will excellence work in terms of teaching with graduate students to begin in group video, teaching to the MIT OpenCourseWare or the Yale OpenYale courses?
Okay, thank you.
I'm Leah. I'm a master's student in the Policy, Organization, and Leadership Studies program. And I come from Oakland, and we just have piloted the Effective Teaching Framework, which is all about giving feedback on teaching. So I'm really interested to see how this relates.
That'll be fun to see how it relates. Elizabeth.
So I'm Elizabeth. I'm here in Sunset as a postdoc. I'm here because I've known you from long distance, but not in person. But also a lot of my research work focuses on how teachers are using their everyday classroom experiences, which I think has a lot of very close ties with giving feedback.
Great.
Hi everybody, my name is G. Reyes. I'm a postdoc over here in the School of Ed, working with Kenji Yakuda. I'm from Oakland also. I've worked in the district for several years as a school leader and as a teacher. I'm a visiting scholar over at Mills College, working with teachers who are trying to get their masters, and I do a lot of work with just trying to understand, like, how do we understand how students are learning.
And you want to give a plug for next month?
Next month, I'm going to be giving folks something to ponder next month.
Yeah, we're very excited about that talk as well.
Right on, thank you.
My name's Lynn. I'm a 4th and 5th grade teacher from over the hill. Right now I've stepped out of the classroom, teacher on special assignment, and I'm very interested in how feedback accelerates learning.
Yay. I am so happy to have you here. Thank you. I hope getting to campus and parking was uneventful.
No.
Never?
All right. Well, we can talk afterwards about getting here. I can't fix, but I can make parking. You should always be able to find free parking by the time you come to these talks. So if anybody needs hints on that, I'm happy to help. I'm going to go middle and then around and back over.
Hello, I'm Bulgarka. My background, I'm in the POLS program.
Great.
But I'm a tenured faculty member at Pasadena City College. So I'm here on sabbatical actually. And in higher education, we need to kind of talk about strengthening teaching as well as K-12.
Yeah.
So that's why
Yeah, and
I'm
I
here.
actually think your findings are relevant regardless of what age level you teach.
Hi, I'm John. I work for an organization called Partners in School Innovation, and so I do basically like among other things, instructional coaching with teachers. So
Perfect.
yeah,
You are at the right
sort
talk.
of answers the question why I'm here. And I was polls last year. So
Good. Welcome back.
we get jobs.
Nice plug.
Hi, I'm Kim. I work right downstairs at the Stanford Teacher Education Program, supervising new teacher candidates in English. And I was a high school English teacher for over 10 years.
My name is Polly, and I do exactly what Kim does, except for in science.
I'm Tim, and I do exactly what John does, except for in San Francisco.
And I'm in the South Bay in San Jose.
But same organization?
Same organization.
Okay. All right.
My name is Casey. I'm also a master's student in the polls program. I'm an aspiring instructional coach or administrator, and kind of really interested in how you give feedback.
Okay.
to teachers.
Nice. Anthony?
Hi. Anthony, I'm a third-year doctoral student, and I work obviously with CSET and working with teachers, and so this is giving feedback a lot. It's very important.
My name is Juan. I'm a third-year doctoral student here. I'm actually in the developmental psych kind of nook of the GSE, but my interest is kind of in like teachers providing feedback to tutors, either like high school or college level. So kind of like the teachers before they're teachers. So really interested in like how we can develop that.
Very interesting.
Hi, my name is Florencia. I'm here as a postdoc in CSET in 2 projects, one in science, one in math, both PD related to helping teachers facilitate students' work. And so I'm very interested in learning more. I know. How about your work?
I'm here from UC Berkeley, the Puente Project. I'm a statewide teacher training coordinator, and so one of my jobs is as an instructional coach.
Great. You come before?
I actually did one of the studios, the Stanford Studios.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did it like maybe 3 months.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
My 2 standing people.
Hi, I'm Jen. I work here.
She's we get to eat and socialize. Javier?
I'm Javier. I help organize these talks, and I help organize CSET, so I damn well better be here.
And you're interested in supporting excellence in teaching.
Of course, that's why I do both of those things.
All right, Dina, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for coming. That was actually really helpful to know who's in the room. And I was telling Janet earlier that I've presented this before, but I wanted to make it more hands-on and useful to you. So as questions come up, please stop me and ask. So before I start telling you about my project and my study and what I found, I wanted to just kind of get into to this idea of getting feedback and what's useful and what's not. And if you can think of a time where you received, you can share one of them. You don't have to think of both. But when was the time that you actually got feedback that changed what you were doing? And what was about it that was useful to you? Or if you can't think of that, then the second one, which is, when did you get feedback that really wasn't helpful to you? And what could have possibly made it helpful? So let's just take a few minutes and maybe talk in pairs, and then I'll ask for people to share a couple of insights. Okay, so let's take about 3 to 4 minutes.
So I don't know if it's
yeah, like I was
Yeah, I can say the same thing. And I'm thinking also about feedback when there's no next draft, when it was a final project that's not useful, you're continuing to revise and to rewrite. But timeliness matters. Unrelated, yeah. about something else.
Yeah, I would say the body of my feedback wasn't useful to move my work.
And I'll say I'm happy
that's actually
the final draft and we're going to change my first type of writing over on that.
The second one was my formal feedback. My first and second year, a lot of us out of course, there was one thing that I'm unsure communication highlights. I took that and the next year I made sure I was the expert in and I've gotten results back.
Because when you get the feedback, you're like, so if I come in and remember, if I look at 10 different teachers for something, that's another element. What if I'm an outlier? How do I get to this situation? How do I know we're going to get all sorts of other things. Let's take 1 more minute. And what's the Alright, so let's finish your thought. I just want to ask, this room got really loud, so clearly you all care about this in terms of getting or giving feedback. So if we can get a couple of people to share what was useful about the feedback that you got. I know some people were sharing what they gave. So either one, I realize that is important as well. Anyone? What was the feedback, and then how was it useful, or what was useful about it? Yeah.
I guess thinking about all my feedback, the one that was most useful was like not necessarily, it wasn't that constructive, but it wasn't like you're doing a great job, because there was so much you're doing a great job, well I can't do anything with that. Or so like the one like I'm not sure this might be a weakness, that was super helpful. There wasn't action steps about that, but like I was able to take the action, but like just not.
So what was the feedback?
Feedback was unsure if Casey has great communication skills with parents.
Okay.
Just so that's something, because like Casey, you're good at this, you're good at this, you're good at this. I'm like, great, I have nothing to fix. So it gave me something to focus on.
Okay.
We talked about how positive feedback can be unhelpful. In that, not just do you have nothing to fix, but you don't even know what it is you're doing well. Like if someone just says, good job.
It frustrates a lot of people. Oh yeah. Let's see here and then
Well, I'm thinking like the feedback that was most useful was sort of like feedback I asked for. Like I said, I want you to look at this. Like you're my coach. This is what I'm interested in working on. So I want you to like look at how much I use positive reinforcement in the classroom and like kind of. And then there's like real concrete data to look at that shows like if I'm doing better at that or not.
Yeah, it might, if you're specific about that, then the person observing you knows exactly what to look for. Yeah.
Yeah, something that we share here is that it's been useful when feedback is specific and detailed. And so in some ways related to what you said, like when you get feedback that's too general and doesn't tackle to some particular issue, you're like, okay, but I can't use it, you know? Like it's great, but I can use it. So
yeah, whether negative or positive.
Yeah.
A lot of in a previous study that I did, a lot of the teachers were, I said, frustrated. They were skeptical, frustrated, and critical of the positive feedback because they didn't know what they had done to attain that standard. They're like, well, I can't repeat this. I can't recreate what I did. That was great. So positive feedback could also actually cause that kind of frustration. So yeah, so my goal today is to share a little bit of my study and the findings. And but most of the time I want to spend like really digging into some feedback comments, and I have a way that I've conceptualized looking at it, and so I'm really I want to share a little bit and then get from you digging in and seeing like what's actually helpful, useful to you, and I selfishly really want to hear from you because I want to see where this work should actually go. So I'm hoping there will be a lot of dialogue. I'll share my research questions. So I was really interested in how teaching changes over time when teachers get consistent feedback. So my first question was how the teaching changes. The second question was what's the actual feedback that they're getting? And then are there elements of the feedback that they're getting that's associated with the changes? Okay. So if there's anyone interested in how the teaching evolved over the course of the year, I have really nice diagrams, and I'm not going to concentrate on that. If there's interest, I will show it at the end. I have the slides. But what I actually really want to concentrate on is what are the elements of the feedback that were associated with the changes that I saw, and kind of dig into that and see what that means and if it makes sense. So a little bit about the study. My study was situated within a professional development program within a university. So I'm laughing because it's being recorded, so I won't say any more than that. So basically, teachers came to this university, and they got 2 summer institutes. And in between the summer institutes, they got a full year of coaching. They were assigned a subject matter coach. So these were high school teachers and early career high school teachers. And so you can kind of see, so they got a summer institute. They got coaching, another summer institute, and then year 2 of coaching. My study is situated within this 1 year where they uploaded videos of themselves teaching onto a platform. The coach went in and watched it, and then eventually they actually started watching each other's videos and giving each other feedback. So the feedback data that I'm looking at comes from the first year coaching that they got throughout the year. So the data that I have are 3 teachers, and I have 4 videos for each teacher, and all the feedback comments that were associated with all of those videos. So the conceptual framework that guided my study had to do with what we know about feedback and what we also know about teacher learning. So these were high school teachers, and I'm sure you're all thinking what grade level and what subject matter. They were, well, I already said English language arts, but so what were they trying to do, trying to improve? So a lot of the policy changes that have happened due to Common Core have led to this emphasis in English language arts and across the other subject areas on classroom discussion. Are kids talking to each other? What's the quality of the discussion that's happening? That was the focus of the professional development that they got. So there's a lot of research on classroom discussion and how students should be engaged in the discussion, what teachers should do to facilitate discussion. So there's these specific things that we can look for. For example, how is the teacher facilitating? Are they pressing students for evidence? Is the student linking their comments that they're making about a piece of literature to someone that spoke before them? So there's all these things that we know from research on classroom discussion. So when I was watching the videos, these are the things that I was looking for. So essentially what the Common Core state standards on, and the research on classroom discourse says is when you're facilitating classroom discussion, we're going from what typically traditionally used to be students talking to teachers, teachers talking to students, to a more facilitative classroom where there's discussion happening and the teacher's coming in and out of the discussion, and they're really actually just facilitating the discussion, setting up the stage for students to engage one another. So just a little bit about the professional development. We know from a lot of the research what effective teacher learning is, and so the professional development program that these teachers were engaged in actually had a lot of the characteristics. It was designed with all of the characteristics of what a good professional development is. So for example, it was situated in their practice, which is something that comes out of the literature. They were using artifacts of their practice, which were the videos and materials from their classrooms. There was a subject matter focus. So there's other elements, but the PD actually embodied a lot of these characteristics, which was really interesting and exciting for me to look at, because it, in a lot of ways, it was in an ideal place for teachers to learn and grow. So there's a lot of research on classroom discourse. There's a lot of research on teacher PD. I couldn't find a lot on what is effective feedback. So I went kind of large, and what I settled on was this this theory called feedback intervention theory, and from it I pulled basically what the theory says is that depending on where feedback draws your attention to, so when you're receiving feedback, it will determine how you act. So I'll break it down. There's basically 3 types of feedback here. One of them has to do with, and some of you already mentioned, this idea of is it specific or descriptive? So here, a definition of this is it actually outlining what the process that was observed? So is it descriptive of what the students did or what the teacher did? So if you get a description of this, you're essentially asking the person receiving the feedback to focus on what the task was. So it activates learning. So this comes from psychology, and so it actually explains kind of what happens in the recipient's head when they receive feedback. And if you're getting descriptions of what you were doing, it activates your learning processes because it's actually telling you what you did and what you didn't do. The second element is, I'm calling it product feedback. It's basically a value to feedback. Did you do it or did you not do it? So this is the positive and negative, and we're going to dig into feedback comments, so you'll get to see where these are in the feedback comments and what they sound like. So did you attain the standard or did you not? So this is an evaluation. Essentially, this is what a lot of teachers get. You met standards, didn't meet standards, and 90-some% of teachers get you met the standards, which doesn't do anything for them. So it can activate motivational processes, because if you did really well, then yay, you did it, and if you know what you did, you can go do more. If you didn't do well, then you can strive to do better. So it can activate motivational processes in a person, and it actually focuses you on the end of the task. Did I attain it or not? It does not look at the process of what you did. And then a third level, which actually hurts performance if you're ever talking about this, is if you're talking about the individual's characteristics. So I'm calling that self, and these are unchangeable characteristics. You can't change your personality. You can't change how engaging you are, your charisma, or control. There are a lot of things about yourself you can't control. So it activates things in your head that are what the theory says are meta tasks. So you can't really do anything about it. So the theory really says this is not, you want to stay away from self-feedback. So I won't talk about coding analysis too much other than to say I had feedback comments and I had videos that I was looking at. And I'll just show you the platform. So basically, here's a platform that they uploaded a video. I will show you a clip of that video. So they had comments feedback comments that were tagged to particular time points. So, I coded the feedback comments based on these 3 elements. And I can share these slides so you don't have to write. So I coded the feedback comments in terms of whether they were descriptive, whether they actually said a negative or positive. And when I say negative, I mean critical, if there was a suggestion made. So it's not just, negative is not the best word. And then, or if they talked about the teacher's self or the student's self. So the other things that I coded for, I'm not going to concentrate on this one too much because I think it's more important to look at the features. And the content-specific things are content-specific, so you can actually, once you get the non-content features down, then you can use it for any subject area. But for this, they were doing classroom discussion, so I used classroom discussion literature to say, okay, what is the feedback talking about? Is it talking about student analysis, uptake, kind of the substance of it? And then I also coded for whether the teachers got strategies named in the feedback comments. So examples being like, was the teacher told to press students or question them to provide more analysis, etc. So those are the 2 types of data. So I'm going to pause before I give you my findings. Any questions so far? Clarification questions or any? All right, you all want to know my findings. All right. So throughout the school year, every single teacher's classroom discussion changed across the year in different ways, in more nuanced ways in some, in drastic ways in others. So I'll give you a couple of examples, and then I'll show you actually. So this is essentially what happened in each teacher's classroom. The teacher's classroom physically went from looking like this to looking like this. And I'll show you a couple of pictures in just a second. And these changes were related to the feedback comments, the types of feedback comments that they got. So,
can I clarify?
yeah.
With the first pictogram, the T and the S's, that's based on a video from the school year post-PD, not the baseline video?
No, I didn't look at baseline video.
Okay, so this is after they've had the PD?
Yes. Yeah, even after the PD, they still were, yeah. So here's one teacher's classroom. This is cycle 2, so there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So here's Leah's classroom, and what do you notice here?
Facing forward.
So the teacher's up here, students are talking to the teacher, looking at the teacher, and they're taking turns doing that. This is cycle 2 still. So this is like end of fall or winterish. And here's cycle 4 at the end of the year. It's a little, I had to zoom in, so it's a little, it's not as clear. Do you guys notice anything? So they're sitting in a circle.
Actually picking up the papers.
Yeah, and they have, so there was a few other things that was happening. So here they have like all this other stuff on their tables. Here they just have the paper that has questions in their notes and the book that they're reading. Yeah.
So in cycle 4, was that like, it wasn't like a pre or post testing? I always wonder about that.
Oh, you mean like state testing?
Like state testing? Because sometimes like teachers kind of free up their classroom, so to speak, after testing.
So this happened actually, cycle 4 was early in the year. It wasn't that late in the year. It was probably April or May. So it wasn't like
April
June.
would be like, yeah, because late April's testing, that's why I was wondering. I didn't know.
Possibly.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Possibly, yeah.
Knowing the bigger data set, that's a variable we could eliminate.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I got that.
This just kind of shows you one teacher's classroom, and you'll just have to take my word for it. All 3 teachers' classrooms looked like this, where in the beginning of the year, and then by the end of the year, it physically looked like this. The quality also shifted as well, so I want to show you, just play a short clip from this other teacher's classroom. And so this is a different teacher. This is Michael. So you can, this is cycle 1. You notice the same thing. Students are kind of sitting circular, but they're still facing him. He has the document camera and the text under the document camera. And so he's facilitating the discussion. And I'll provide a little bit of text for you so you can see, kind of hear him and see what he's saying. All right, where do I?
Clearly have this. So I'm going to open up the floor for about 5 minutes. Let's just go down the list. Entirely you lead. Start wherever you want. But we need to knock out 2 things. Why does she use these? Really, how do these moves that she makes help to convey this theme? So Sharon, why don't you start us off?
So, so what he's doing, he's starting the discussion. He is posing the question to the students, and he has a timer. It sets for 5 minutes, and what ends up happening is you hear. It would have taken too long to have these students actually talking. I'll show you. I'll play another clip. But essentially, this is what students say. So students say things like, "I wanted to talk about," and then share their argument. I said that, so they're reading off of their page. I thought that, I think that. So they're essentially just talking to the IRE kind of, to the teacher says, okay, good, and then someone else raises their hand, and then they share. So the next video is very rich, so I wanted to play this one for you, a little lengthier. You might notice the camera's not gonna capture the whole class, but they're sitting in a circular, and then we'll talk about what you hear.
I have a similar idea to what Jessie is saying, because Zanaya touched on, she brought up how Cornwall, he was like angry, things like that, and Jessie put up this point about a lack of power. In Cornwall, he is like just now, well, he doesn't have power, he just has part of King Lear's like kingdom because of King Lear's daughter. So in Act 2, Scene 2, when Kit and Oswald was like interacting with each other, he comes in and says, "Keep your peace, Barney lies, he dies if he strikes again." So in that moment, he's trying to assert that he has the power to make a move where he can get any one of the men killed if they continue to like bicker or whatever they were doing. And later on in the scene, as Kent was having a conversation with Cornwall, he didn't like the way Kent was responding to him. He got enraged because now he's trying to, okay, I have this land, I'm almost at the power of this kingdom. Why is this man talking to me in this way? I need to assert the power that I'm giving now. So that desire for more power is like anger pushes that desire for more power. I don't think that power should be greatness.
Good. Okay, so by power, do you mean like you have power in land or power in authority? Because okay, you're talking about power as in like how much he owns, but are you talking about power and authority? Because like in that case, then his daughters, such as Reagan, has power by the time Oswald's like disrespect the king, so she's giving the authority to like make King Lear angry. So like I guess some clarification on what type of power you're talking about.
Pause for a moment. What move did Jordan just make that really is going to allow us to proceed?
She crystallized the key term of power because she didn't know. I mean, she wanted to clarify. Well, she wanted to get the key term clarified because she wanted to see the power. We're talking about power in terms of money or in terms of.
All right. So what did you see there? Yeah, this kid's answer, and then there's a few more after this. That was just like so rich for me. What did you see there happening?
Dialogue.
What do you mean by dialogue? What are they doing?
There was a characterization, an interpretation of Lear. There was a response. There was a communication in that back and forth, and it developed from there.
Yeah, they're connecting to one another. Anything else?
Maybe based on the notion of power, it's not a teacher-driven classroom. It's not monologic, dialogic, right? So students are holding up that conversation, and the teacher was a facilitator in that.
Yeah.
And they are having to listen to each other, right? Student 1 commented on 2 other people, and then student 3 asks a question, or 2, and then 3 like has to go back. Often we don't get kids listening to each other for that long.
Yeah. So they actually all build on one another in some way. So there isn't that, I think that to the teacher, you're looking at someone and you have to connect to what they just said.
Right.
Agree, disagree, any of those. Yeah.
Oh, just that they're analyzing, they're clarifying, they're synthesizing, they're doing everything that they need to be doing to raise the sophistication of that conversation and get into an in-depth conversation about the text.
I also find the teacher move fascinating.
Yeah.
He's not commenting on Lear. He's not commenting on power. He's moving out to a metacognitive level to make them aware of what they did.
Right.
And it just, I love that.
Yeah, this video, it was very fascinating to watch. There's actually, the teacher asks them later, something's happening, what's going on, what's happening with these 3 people that just spoke? And then one of the students says, I think we're getting into some groupthink here. I think someone needs to puncture the groupthink. And I was like, wow, that's not what I was thinking when I was in high school. So the teacher is actually really a facilitator. It's a perfect example of a facilitator. And yet the feedback comments he got, some of them were actually highly critical of so it was still he still had a lot of room to grow. So I mean, I think you hit on a lot of these, a lot of the things that happened had to do with where he wanted his kids to be in terms of in the standards of English language arts and connecting, analyzing the text and taking up other people's ideas. So I can talk more about him, but I want to dig into the feedback comments. So what were some of the feedback comments that they got? So I argued that this discussion changed across the year in all 3 teachers' classrooms in some very simple. So the 2 examples that I gave are pretty indicative of the other teachers in some nuanced ways. And then that the changes were related to the types of feedback comments that they got. So what were the feedback comments? Majority of the feedback comments that led to the changes had to do with the feedback actually really describing what the teacher said or did, or what the students said or did. Basically what happened, what I'm calling process-oriented feedback. However, there was a balance of negative and positive feedback. There was a balance of, you did this great, and here's what you did, so that the teacher can go say that again in the next lesson or build on it. Or if it was negative, it actually spelled out what the teacher did and how they didn't actually mean, or they didn't get the students to do something. So there was a balance of negative and positive. So this goes to you don't really have to, you can be honest in feedback to people on their performance if you actually couch that honesty in describing what they were doing. Since doing this study, I've read a bunch of stuff on conversations and how to be honest in conversations. So if anyone's interested, I can, in my new life, I've been reading a lot on, how to be really honest in conversations, but also not hurt people's feelings and get what you want across. And then the other thing was, almost every feedback comment had some kind of a goal or strategy named. Here's what you were trying to do, and here's how you were trying to do it. You didn't do it, or you should do it, but there was the naming of the goals and the strategies were important. And so this goes back to, that's why I didn't want to get subject specific here. You can do this in any subject. For science, what are the concepts you want teachers to be conveying, you want students to learn, and are they named in the feedback comments? All right, so I want to go through one feedback comment, and then I'm going to give you a handout, and I want us to underline, highlight, circle, and talk about where we see these in the feedback comments and what they are. So here's a feedback that one of the teachers got. The feedback said, partner talk broke down a bit with the partnerships in view in front of us in the video. Reset. So this is the feedback comment. So the first thing I looked for was, is this product feedback, positive or negative? Is it process feedback, or is there any self-feedback? Notice in my findings, I didn't tell you much about the self. There was actually very few comments from the teachers about themselves, which I thought was fascinating because this has a lot to do with the fact that there was a video involved, so that's a whole nother conversation of like, when you have video, you can actually be very descriptive of what you're seeing versus when you're going to observe a teacher in the classroom and you're frantically taking notes, it doesn't allow you to be as like detailed of like what you saw. So you're basing it on memory. But so, is there evaluation here? Is there a negative or positive here? Where do you see it? Broke down. So broke down tells you that tells you it's negative. Is there any process feedback here? Is it describing what the students did or what the teacher did? No. So there is no real process here. So we just know that talk broke down. So then we'll talk about goals and strategies, but we don't need to concentrate on them. So you see my notes here. So it doesn't describe what the teacher did nor what the student did. It only states that something negative happened, that something broke down. What is the goal of this feedback comment, or what was the goal of the discussion here that the coach was probably seeing? Where in the feedback tells you?
Reset? Because it's saying, or is that the strategy?
That's the strategy, yeah. So what should have been happening that didn't happen? I guess I'll say it that way.
Partnership conversations that don't break down?
Yeah, so what should have been happening is student participation. That's the ultimate goal here, that students were talking to each other. Student engagement, participation, however you want to frame it. So there's some kind of engagement or participation that should have been happening, and these are the words that tell you. And I'm pointing these out because it's important to see where they are and name them. And then you already said, the reset is the strategy here. I'm not sure, who knows what reset means here?
You could guess.
You can guess, but as a teacher getting feedback that says reset question mark, does it tell you where to go, what to do? I mean, it might mean reset norms, it might mean a lot of different things, so that's unclear. So I would say this was not very common in this data set, but I wanted to pull out one so you can see what I would consider not effective feedback. So, all right, now I have a handout for you, and we can dig into this and see if the way that I'm conceptualizing these feedback actually makes sense. Here it comes. So at the very top, I have, this is part of my code book. This is how I looked at the feedback comments. So was it negative or positive? Did it describe actions? And then was it about the self? So I want this, so if you want to work with someone next to you or if you want to write and then we'll talk, but I want us to spend some time looking at the text and then come back together and see what we find. So let's take about 7 minutes. It took me a lot longer than 7 minutes to code this data, I promise. Yeah. Oh, okay.
I just thought it was positive.
Yeah, positive.
Because you went to Berkeley.
There was it sounds like there's a discussion, there's no strategy.
Positive. About.
So yeah, so that was one of the,
great guidance.
Yeah, so one of the findings positive in nature was for across all the teachers is that finding this balance.
Well, there's no instructional manual, right? I mean, we've got guidance
to
to
point
be
out
in
how would you step in and how would you let students struggle with this.
Yeah, it's because it's an evaluative.
It varied, so it really varied to the point where it was,
I feel like the goal
you stepped in too quickly, why did you do that? There was
Give more
times where
guidance.
you should have stepped in more. And I mean, that has a lot to do with like teacher professional strategy. Once you're at a point where you can more. It's a professional judgment in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, not really.
And it's not particularly, I mean, it's helpful and it helps them know where to go, but in terms of how many more necessary, you know, like it's negative because
right, yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes happens that is less than productive.
So this next one, 3 is missing.
So I'm hoping you're writing on this, underlining, circling.
And or how
This student said to add on that did something new, so it wasn't an add-on.
Like you can have, so coding can be embedded, but then you go to the higher level if all those are present.
Oh, it's like the school.
So I didn't want to name it, so that's why it's in brackets. I took it out. That's my effort at anonymizing the data.
So to revise. Yeah.
And she gives a sentence frame.
Yeah. Very good. It's very specific.
You can see she's changing it. She's not just adding on to what Ariel said. She said something different. Like an add-on might leave the same thing Ariel said, but
I'll email it.
It's different than that.
It's very horrible writing long here.
So this is
All right,
process
so-
very specific
Yes.
about what the student is doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the goal
What's it
is better transitions, or like
So-
it's for the teacher to say something different.
So is there anything else here besides
So just
process?
idea.
So you want to go
Yeah,
through it,
it's
so it
also-
could be any
Okay.
combination of those, right?
Okay, and it's.
So it's process because it's describing what the teacher was, the student was doing.
But it's
Oh,
also
okay.
Is there a negative or positive?
Oh, I thought that brisk product would be
That last sentence is
process
sort of
as
product.
also.
It could be both.
It's also-
So the feedback comment could be a negative comment or a positive comment saying this great thing happened or this thing didn't happen.
Well, it's negative about the product because it's not actually adding on, it's a new
Right, so
characterization.
it's process and then also product.
So where do you get the product from? What language tells you that there's it's a critical feedback?
Her transition.
But
That the student effort of transition, yeah, the
It's very
buts.
teacher-
and then telling her to revise.
Right.
Right, can't, I mean, it does say effectively, it says but
The strategy is change
That's not
teacher
necessarily-
response.
Yeah,
Or
tell you, so what are we talking about strategy?
Annotating, yes,
Oh,
that's
I was trying to
good.
figure out-
Right, because this is saying, the student goes to, I don't know what Ariel said, here's what I did. Now, I would
The
say,
idea would be like, do that again.
no,
Do something
you offer a new
Reinforcing the
characterization
same. Yeah.
of what
It feels
Ariel
very
said. So
descriptive,
instead,
but not
maybe
very-
revise your answer to say,
Is there language in there that describes what the teacher did or was it the
but
student?
what if the student really wanted to then go back and say, actually start again and say.
So I mean, well, does
this
it
transition
conform to what my
I
definition
do
of
feel like,
process
I mean,
is?
what I would do in that situation is
I mean,
probably
this is the hard part I always
that
have with
comes
code
to the
because
student.
So-
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So it could be either one.
that's what,
Let's
yeah,
take a
because I was
second to
wondering
notice
like
this.
when you're coding.
Ariel made a great point
How
here.
to try to err
Or
on
like the new
when they have
student, whatever,
new
made a
students.
great point here, but like you notice it really was no
No, it was one or the other. If one
Oh,
or the
so
other,
one or the
if one or the
other.
other was there, I should have said or,
sorry.
Like, you know, and
If there's teacher actions described or student actions described,
yeah, so maybe that's not the best way.
Yeah.
But like, you know, kind of.
Yeah, I'm wondering how do I implement this?
Right.
Yeah.
Very. Like, so usually things are kind of like product and maybe there's process and maybe there's.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think there's only a few feedback points that were pure like clarifications. Like I can't hear that students. Almost all of the comments have come back negative. Yeah.
So so in other words,
Hence
non-neutral.
hence the claim that you have to have a balance of, like every comment has to be positive or negative essentially.
Do you?
So that could be a specific feedback that you would provide to the students.
Yeah.
Say, I mean, a teacher can.
In order for it to be helpful, then
you could say maybe you could have those.
There needs to be description.
Those ways of adding in conversation.
I mean, this is the difference between like summative evaluations and formative evaluations, right? If you think of like students, if you're giving a summative evaluation, it's at the end of the year. It doesn't matter really. It's for like accountability.
Otherwise, we're gonna have like 60 people
formative evaluation is meant to help
structures and part of our
change
education process was like
teaching.
So it's exactly that. It's creating a scaffolding teacher. It's like authoritarian. You focus a lot. You should put your hand up. Better educators. That's the Delta 5.
Because the way the program is set up, if I'm guessing which program, because of the way the program is set up, it is set up as a formative assessment type of feedback tool.
Okay, so
and
this
now
is
there's
a
just
product
like,
positive
right.
and then.
Can you go in and look at like AP's feedback and see whether, this is gonna be all checklist.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what they write also, whether it's
Yeah.
closer to that summative type.
Right, so I mean,
feedback.
most teacher evaluation feedback is summative. I mean, it's meant to be formative, like if you get it like in the middle of the year. Yeah.
Clearly identified.
So it's meant to be, yeah.
The thing that you did was good. Like, so it's like, there was really strong engagement. The reason for that was use this again.
Yeah, use this.
Yes.
Have you guys talked about which one?
So it's like repeat.
Is it clear?
I wasn't super clear about questions.
So the goal is to
process
or
something else.
So for the last one, yeah. So what do the questions tell you in that feedback?
Well, it's almost like a guide.
What was the
Strategies to describe. That's right. I mean, it's like only praise. It's kind of just like you did great. Keep doing it. That's all you can do.
Yeah, but that's not helpful, right? Is it like a clarification question or is it?
Well, no, because it's not specific. If it was specific about
Most times when they get a question,
what was it? They tell you what it was.
Well, and then there's like the last comment, right? Like what you want as a teacher.
Yeah.
But
So getting the.
So like in this case, like I would say the goal is that.
So what's the?
Correct.
If there is a negative, I didn't think the wait time.
But it's also framed.
So what's the strategy there?
Group of questions. This is how I feel like.
Yeah.
It's linked to a project that you can actually say.
Instructional coach is just describing each or not being right.
Yeah, and it's very, I mean, I'm thinking, something like my feedback.
Right, I mean, so like that's the thing, and it's not,
Right. I think there's
not
Okay, so the way that I'm thinking of product is, describing the good is saying,
I mean, I see this all the time, like, and I just,
create a connection, and teacher with successful.
you're like, okay, they're not your partner,
Yeah.
like, you don't feel that talking to yourself anymore.
So and you're, I think it's an evaluation of what happened.
Because we're like, it's a great way to get rid of the to put that in, and so it's different.
So it's almost like all like feedback. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it just makes you think about the starting at 5 whys. So somebody's like, we're going to do right with this. Like, yes, why? And then they have to like,
Oh yeah, you say, why was that?
yeah, I feel like this. It's great that you have this whole process.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why I agree with teachers, because it doesn't
So if it's
really
literature of evidence,
how are we supporting
that's
other
the
insurance? And so
And
like
so,
now I
like this students actually go to text and use feedback.
like not just be like, oh, that was a good strategy.
I mean, in science, there's like so in math it would be slightly different, but what is it like about the rules as you try to right together? So there's that's what I think students actually
Yeah, I think this is good. Balancing.
That was the term that they just reported to me, that everyone is so many,
where are the press
How you use that is more important.
I think so it's descriptive, but I'm not sure how to gauge enough. So there's other ones because there's time that has to do with, I want you to count to blah, blah, blah before you talk. There were some that were like the instructions. So this would have been coded as an instructional strategy. So there's explicit and implicit, so this would have been instructive. Right. Yeah, there's wait time.
I think that's probably
But I'm not sure
that has been
just
as in
piece it.
to not force back and get
Questions, I guess I felt like
Right.
the feedback was you don't have to like talk, you don't have to get to this
yellow tags. So that would still have been a suggestion, right? That would still have been, and you click on this person, that would have been effective. That would have been effective if you said, next time to wait 10 seconds. There's a lot of, do you guys use next time wait until you like it? Before you talk. There's a few like that, which was what led to the teachers just back to like having more setup, and then we were like, well, we're looking at it, so do we want it? Being more strategic. It's like the instructional strategy.
It's really, I think it's really just a car. I can just tell why.
Yeah, but like how many of you have questions? So that would be that was a strategy.
I use that called tricky. So I didn't evaluate
Yeah, I guess you.
But it didn't sound like a lot of questions. Technically, it's like, this is the only time I critique a chance to talk to the teacher, maybe we should.
All right, let's maybe finish your thought, and let's see what you guys found in these.
Do you have the key?
Oh, you want to know whether you got the answers right. So I want to actually, we don't have to go through all of these and like highlight them, but I want to talk about, let's see what came out. Did this way of looking at the feedback work? Is there something missing? So maybe let's look at, let's skip number 2, because I think everyone got number 2. It's positive, but it doesn't tell you what that guidance was and what to do next time. So let's go to number 4. What did you guys find? Was there a product feedback here? Was there a positive or critical commenting here? Yes, I see people nodding. Where did you see the critical comment? Or what words told you that something didn't happen?
False acknowledgments and transition is not as strong.
Yeah, so there's this element of the student did this, but they actually didn't do exactly what you wanted them to do, which was to make this connection. There's a false connection. There's the word not, there's the but, so that tells you that something wasn't met, the goal wasn't met. Was there a process here? Was there a description of what happened? Yeah, there's actual quoting of the student here. What was the goal here? This is subject specific, so the goal here would have been student uptake for discussion or analysis. Did you see a strategy named? What's the strategy?
Perhaps tell her to revise.
Say what?
Perhaps tell her to revise.
Tell her to revise. What's that a teacher strategy that?
It's like a sentence frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're providing them a sentence frame. You're pressing them to use this sentence frame. And so this was really big with these teachers. There's certain sentence frames you introduce to get kids to practice connecting to other students, and then it becomes kind of part of their vocabulary that they use. So this is what this.
I have to go to supervisor's next month. As you know, it's Wednesday.
Oh, fun! I used to be a supervisor. Joy.
Thank you.
This would have been an effective feedback, right? I mean, this was feedback that actually said what happened, what the student did, what the teacher should do, and it describes what. So this takes. I mean, one of the things is that like the coach really needs to have like really deep knowledge of what the teacher's trying to do, right? This goes back to the whole like subject matter nature of like the person giving feedback should have substantive knowledge of the subject that they're walking into. So that's a whole nother kind of ball game in terms of like principals giving feedback. A lot of times they don't have the subject matter knowledge. So one of the things that I suggested is in my paper is that we really need teachers giving feedback to each other that are teaching the same subject, and we really need. Actually, I don't even know if this came from a coach or if this came from one of the teachers. It could have been one of the other teachers that provided this feedback. That when you have a depth of knowledge of the subject, your quality of feedback is actually pretty high. So the next one is a positive one. So there is a product, there is an evaluation there. Was there any description of what was happening? There's some argument of whether there was or not.
General.
General. So it wasn't as specific as you wanted it to be. But
it wasn't like describing the moment. It was I felt like it was describing the class.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the unit of description kind of
right.
affects how I saw it.
So I still would have coded this as descriptive because she's talking about the students identifying the illusion and what it was an allusion to. So so I still would consider that. It's not as descriptive as the one before where you're quoting.
But it's also tagged to a point in video, right?
Right.
So that kind of supplants a verbal description.
Right. So you could actually go back and like watch that part and see what was happening there. And then there's a specific, so the goal is analysis, and then there's a specific strategy or scaffold that you could put in, which is the sentence stem, and sentence frames. And then the last one, we had this discussion back there about the last one. What did you guys think about the last one? Is this positive, negative?
It was hard to understand.
Why? Because it was a bunch of questions?
Well, what is press? Ask this press question, I'm like, what is that? It just took me a while to understand the whole situation.
Yeah, so press was a strategy that the PD program actually unpacked and they had talked about. So you're coming into this, the feedback, but they actually had talked a lot about what it means to press students, what the research comes from, how you do it. Yeah. Yeah.
I had a question about looking in comparing 4 and 6. I was wondering how the feedback was framed. In other words, so were they given the feedback as in the teacher's going to read it and then that was going to end the conversation, or was the feedback the beginning of the conversation? Because in number 4 it seems a little bit more directive, whereas number 6 seemed like, okay, I'm going to leave these questions here so that we can have that conversation later.
Right. So there, some feedback comments actually said, let's talk about this in our debrief. So essentially what people did, what the coaches and teachers did was they tagged comments, and then they had a phone call, a video call basically, where they picked up on some of these questions and talked about them. Yeah. So some of these the teacher would read and they wouldn't talk about, but some of them they brought into the discussion and actually really dug into it and said, here's what you should do. Yeah. So from those discussions came next steps for the teacher. Yeah.
How would your research, did you go into your research with the plan that you would have this set up via video, or, and if so, how might it look different if it were a real-time observation?
Yeah, so I really wanted to be able to understand the teaching that happened after the feedback. So I think I was at the right place at the right time that this became available to me so that I could see it across the year. And I mean, there are some things that I was looking for. I wanted the person giving feedback to have content knowledge and all that stuff so that I could control for those kinds of things. So your second question, if you're doing live, I'm not sure how you, if you were to take notes in a certain way, maybe that would help. I think one of the things that you brought up is knowing exactly what you're looking for. So you really can't look for everything. I mean, even here, they weren't looking for everything. They were looking for a particular thing called classroom discussion. That's what the students were doing. And they were looking for, were the students analyzing literature with evidence? They were looking for, is the student pressing students to provide evidence? Are the students connecting to each other? So there were a key set of strategies that the teacher was using, and what they wanted to see enacted in the student discussion. So, so I think what I would, based on this, I would really go back to what are the limited things that you could actually look for in a live observation, and just really limit to those things. You can't look for everything. And you really can't write down everything. And I think with technology now, you could actually type up a lot of literal. That's what I did when I would visit my student teachers. I would try to, based on what they wanted me to focus on, I would script out what they were saying. Yeah.
Can we go back to 6?
Sure.
So I don't know if it was process or product. We talked about that.
So is there, so it's not about process or product. Almost all of the, I think 90-something% of feedback that was provided either was product. Meaning there was something positive that was praised or something suggested to be changed. So there's, all of these are product. But so the second question is, was there process here? Was there description here to help the teacher of what was happening in the classroom? Did anyone find the description here? Within the questions or within? You use turn and talks during the discussion. So you use turn and talks throughout the discussion.
Little to no wait time.
Yes. So I asked this because you had little to no wait time after you asked this press question. And so because it's tagged to a particular point in the video, the teacher could play it and see what her press question was. And then go back to these questions and say, well, did I have enough wait time? Because she pressed and then she didn't wait for students to to answer her question, and she said, okay, we'll talk in your partners. And so the question here is pushing her to what's the strategy here? I think there was a lot of partner talk used in this video. So the feedback provider is saying you're using too much turn and talk. Like you really need to wait when you're pressing students to offer evidence instead of give them the out of, okay, talk to your partners. So that's where the descriptive comes from, where the feedback is actually saying what the teacher did. It's not saying what the students did, but that's fine. You want one or the other.
It was a little convoluted because there's basically 4 different strategies that she's talking about, that the evaluator is talking about, and that's low stakes, just reminding them that this is a low stakes, and to encourage participation. And then there was the pressing, and then there was the partner talk, and then there was the wait time, so it was a little bit difficult to unpack.
Yes.
And if you were the person giving the evaluation or receiving it, you would okay.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions. So I would probably not provide so many questions, maybe, to just really focus on the wait time part. Yeah.
Did you differentiate between, kind of to what Anthony was saying, of like, I actually wanted to say, like, let's talk later, like, here's some questions to think. Did you differentiate between, like, open questions, genuine, and kind of the, like, I'm leading you towards, you basically need to wait longer when you're pressing, right? Like, these rhetorical guiding questions. Is that different in the way that the feedback is used, or is it like questions are all treated as basically like a negative?
So I had a code for question, I didn't put it on here. So I had a code every time there was a question, but I went back and said, is that question a real question? Because I think what we do a lot to teachers is we make our suggestion in the form of a question, and I know I hated that because I was like, well, just tell me what you want to tell me. Why are you asking? But I mean, it's a way we do. I mean, it's some of it. A lot of it was a suggestion, more masked as a question. But there were some like legitimate clarification questions of like, what happened right before this, or there were some like. So I did not consider those as suggestions. So I separated them for this purpose.
And those kinds of questions, do they fit neatly within kind of like a suggestion product type of thing? And
so yeah, so I would have coded that question, and I would also coded that negative comment. Meaning, by negative meaning there's something that should be changed, a suggestion. Any like big comments about looking at feedback in this way of like, is it descriptive, is it evaluative, is it about the self? I didn't give you any examples of the self because it's pointless to look at those because there's only like 5 of them total, which made me really happy. Did it work for you? Was it confusing?
Well, I have a couple thoughts. For me, this exercise would have been much easier if you had told us that this was feedback on student discussions. Because just reading these comments was very decontextualized, which is why I struggled with number 6.
Okay. I'm sorry. I mean, I thought I had said that the only thing they were concentrating on was student discussion. So every video that they uploaded, I wasn't clear. Every video that they uploaded was them facilitating discussion.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It ended up.
Now you know. Now you know.
And then the other thing is you yourself said that process and product are often not separated. So then I don't understand why it's separated.
So it's not that they're separated, but they a lot of times what people get is the evaluation without the process, without the description. So what you want is to have negative or positive, either one, but to have the description so that you can know what you did well and you can know what to change or what didn't work.
So then I would define process-oriented and product exactly like you just said.
Can you say it so I can?
I would define what those two exactly in the terms you just did right now.
But there are cases where there's product but not process.
Yes.
That's why these are 2 different categories.
Right.
I think I just would like to make a comment that overall, in terms of feedback, people talk about evaluative feedback, just being negative or positive, or great job, or incomplete, or
too many errors.
Mhm.
All those will be considered just evaluative.
Yeah.
And you can have what is called here process, either for the process in the case of the students or the teachers, what they are doing being either descriptive or prescriptive. Descriptive meaning this is wrong. This is
This is what happened.
This is why you are wrong. Prescriptive meaning this is what you are wrong and this is what you can do to improve. But you can do it that, and that's what I found. You can do that process-oriented, meaning, like in this case, what the teacher can actually do to improve their strategies to engage students, or maybe can be in the product, meaning, most of the students are engaged. You can think in that other way about process and product, seems to me, and that's so yeah, it is goal oriented, and yes, feedback is always in this other big context that you are focusing on a particular goal. And I was just mentioning before, you can have a descriptive, a prescriptive feedback that has even a higher level when you provide very specific strategies that help teachers to be more metacognitive about what they are doing, which are these strategies kind of thing.
Yeah. So that's what would have been captured under the strategies. Yeah. I think this part about process-oriented that had to be about students or teachers was the fact that, like, one of the discussions had absolutely no teacher. So you can't really give feedback on what the teacher did. You can only give feedback on what happened, what the students were doing, and whether they were meeting the goals that the teacher had set. So that's where it has to get separated in some way, because a lot of times we observe classrooms where the teacher is not talking.
Yeah, but that would be good. Then the feedback is that they are facilitating adequately, properly. That they are only intervening when
necessary. Yeah.
And then just leaving the students, that would be a positive feedback for them. Saying, yeah, you are talking what you need to talk and not talking what you don't need to.
Yeah, there might be points where
it opens up the door for a missed opportunity for the teacher. Like the kids aren't really doing something productive with the conversation, but the teacher doesn't redirect.
But you can also say that, and it's still
here was a point where it was a strategic opportunity that you could have intervened. Yeah, definitely.
Does the product have to be negative or positive? Like, I'm looking at this engagement was very strong. Like, can you just use like data to say like 9 out of 10 of your students were engaged, and then just leave it?
Right. Yeah. Then it's just giving feedback, then it's just stating a fact, not saying whether it was good or bad.
But then still giving the, like, like, if you did this, you could maybe, like, but you could still try using the same sentence, like, still giving the process piece.
Right, but what do you want the teacher to do with it? Do you want the teacher to think, great, 9 out of 10 were engaged, or I didn't get that one student. So where do you want them to go?
The question that you ask afterward can be either shrouded in this cloak, like what are you trying to get at, which can be frustrating for teachers. They just come out right and say,
yeah, you can just outright say,
or say no, get 10 out of 10.
Right, like one kid had their head down, so you're pointing out that the teacher didn't address that one kid's.
I'm curious if that's so much more of a process, just kind of, you're observing.
Right.
It's 9 out of 10 kids are, that's what happened, that's the description.
Yeah.
Rather than a product.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main point that that I got from these feedback comments was that whether you're making it a praise or you're giving them something that they need to change, it has to have the description in there. Because if you want them to continue doing the awesome thing that they're doing, they need to know what they did. If you want them to change any part of it, they need to know how to change or what to change, which is where strategies come in.
What I find so powerful is this is that the written feedback is in a vacuum. Like what the teachers were able to do is process the feedback together by talking to it. And that's in the formal evaluation structure why the post observation is so crucial, because it allows you to file the feedback in a way that you can actually change your practice. And that's the tricky part about feedback when you have a huge school and you're trying to touch multiple classrooms and it just lives in an email or on paper or here's a copy that you don't have that chance to debrief and connect in person. There's so much to be interpreted or misinterpreted. If
Right.
there's no trust in the school, then it's
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
evaluated.
there's, I think part of the thing that I didn't really talk about is that there needs to be a culture set in order to be able to do this work. Like, you can't be 100% just jumping into this if you haven't set up the norms and the culture to be doing this work. And there's various ways of doing it. I mean, I have a bunch of ideas of how a school could do it, and it wouldn't cost them that much money or that much personnel if you get every teacher involved and everyone has an iPhone and you can, you know, use videos and still do this kind of work without like going, you know, there's PD money that you can use. So there's like ways of doing it to get creative. But this isn't meant to be for an evaluation. Like, a principal can't go in and like check off boxes and expect that that evaluation is going to change teaching. I think that's the misconception that a lot of evaluation systems have, that you really can't expect an evaluation system to do that. And if we're serious about like giving formative feedback that changes teaching, you have to do this descriptive part, which is difficult to do if you are there for 10 minutes and you're rushing in between a kid in the office that has been referred there and a parent and whatever. So it's, I mean, setting it up in a thoughtful way is what's going to get it. Any other comments about the this? I had some questions that I wanted to put up here, and we can take one of them and talk about them a little bit. I know it's 5:45. I kind of wanted to hear what resonated with you. If this were, you kind of talked about it a little bit. Is any of this useful to you to take back to your own work? If so, kind of how is it, and can I be helpful in any way in helping you take it back? And then if you have any questions and things you want to know more about, I'm happy to stick around and talk or send you stuff. But I'd love to hear what was useful and what you would need, if there's anyone that has an idea. Yeah.
I was really excited, attempting to kind of synthesize what you were saying about, you know, we have this little process product and then also goal strategy thing. And if you combine those, it sounds like, I mean, essentially really helpful things are if it is a change-oriented, like you need to improve or, you know, you might do this differently, it needs to be a future-oriented process description. And if it is a, like, keep up the good work, maintain, or success, it needs to be a past-oriented process description. But both of those need to have the process, and it's just like the difference in at what time point you're oriented towards.
Right.
That's, I mean, that's just clicked for me. Hopefully that's kind of what you were trying to send out.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think the key that came through for me, based on the previous study, was that a lot of teachers were pissed off about not getting details about the positive comments. And it's not going to be motivational, and it's not going to feel great if you're told that you're a magical teacher, which was literally a comment, and not know exactly what you did to be magical. So yeah, so positive really needs to have description as well. Any other? Yeah.
I'm just curious, and I can touch base with you afterwards. Do you need resources for how to coach, like either an instructional coach or a principal into giving these types of feedback? Because part of my role is working with teachers, but part of it is also working with school leaders, and I would love to see them start giving feedback like this to their teachers too, like.
First step, the 101.
Yeah, exactly. Like.
I mean, I haven't like packaged this in any way to go to coaches, but I think it could be. I think it could be packaged in a simple way, non-researchy way, for people to test out. I'd love to like.
We're working on it at CSET. Research has informed the coaching work that we're doing, and so we're practicing it internally. So we have several projects where we work with teachers both on-site and via video. I don't know what the right estimate is. It's somewhere between 6 and 12 months before we're going to have a program to help others learn to be coaches.
Okay.
So are you on the CSET mailing list?
Yes.
Okay, that's where you'll hear it first.
All right. Sounds
It's
good.
not the greatest timeline, but.
All right, I will wait patiently.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main takeaway there is that you have to have a process of testing it and getting people calibrated so that they think what they're saying is what they consider process feedback is what everybody else considers it. So yeah, so I mean, I think it shouldn't be that difficult to do, but it's a process to make sure that you're getting it right and then you're training people to do it.
I was gonna say, a lot of mine, when I go and give feedback, it's a one-off because we're in 33 schools all over the state. And so just thinking, you know, how to set up that culture is really difficult. But I think the video part makes it a lot easier. And then the sort of what you're talking about, like the test and calibrate, like maybe if folks are interested in doing that kind of work.
And it's definitely a lot easier to do if it's low stakes and it's like your job's not threatened by it.
Yeah, it's just something you're doing because you want to improve your teaching, and that's something that comes from you.
And I mean, the fact that teachers started watching each other's videos came about from the teachers. Like they started sharing videos with each other, and they were like, "Wait, videos are there. There's no reason why only my coach can see it." The colleague that's also facilitating discussion, and we're working on the same pedagogical goals, should be able to watch the video too. And so they, I think teachers have also always said like the best feedback they got were from like an informal people watching them. So that shouldn't, yeah.
Well,
Sorry, just one quick question. You have the elements of effective feedback. Do you have elements of ineffective feedback too?
Ineffective feedback would be that those first two that I have on there. I mean.
No, I hear that.
Self feedback. Have I named it?
Yeah, have you named here elements? Because I think eventually when you get to coaching coaches. Right, so having those non-examples are going to be valuable too.
Yeah, I mean, I could give you right now, stay away from anything that has to do with personality, charisma, innate characteristics. Stay away from telling someone they're magical and they're inspirational. Things that you really can't change about yourself. I mean,
but what about those nuanced ones with questioning? That's more of a sophisticated type of.
Yeah, in terms of like, don't mask your suggestion in question.
Number 6. 6 actually maps to, it has a description, but it's done in a way that's much less helpful.
Right. Don't ask like 5 questions back to back and then make a suggestion.
They aren't questions.
Yeah, if you really want them to think about something, then really say, I want you to think about how long you took. And like just really be very just upfront about it. Yeah.
So I'm going to pause the conversation. I'm so excited because you got involved in pondering excellence through Edith's talk, so I think we should thank her for this. And then you can continue the conversation informally. There's still refreshments, and we've only touched the top of the iceberg for your work. So there's lots more you could talk to.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk more and send you stuff if or talk. Yeah.